Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We're doing our first monthly reading wrap up of the year, but we're actually wrapping up December. So it's kind of the last reading wrap up of the year, but it's also the first because it's January now. I always confuse myself at the beginning of these wrap up videos for whatever reason. Anyways, welcome. We're going to be talking about the 11 books that I read in December. It's definitely a smaller number than what I've been normally reading for the last few months of 2024, but 11 books is still a lot. And the genre breakdown for the books that we read is also looking very different than what we normally do. So out of those 11 books, 6 of those books were romance, which is the majority genre of my December reads, which is kind of crazy. I can't remember the last time that romance reads made up like the highest number of my monthly wrap up. You guys know me, I'm normally more of a fantasy girl, but I don't know, I guess December just felt like cozy and cute and romantic. After that, we read 2 fantasy, 1 sci-fi, 1 lit fic, and 1 mystery. We did successfully complete our December TBR, 7 out of 7 books done. So there's a success as well, and we're going to dive into all of those. But first of all, before we do, I want to quickly share something that I think is really exciting, especially for those of you who have ever dreamed of publishing your own books. So I want to thank Spines for sponsoring today's video. If you are dreaming of publishing, writing your own book, Spines is definitely a platform that you want to know about. They combine technology and traditional publishing to help you bring your stories to life. Whether it's your first manuscript or a new project, they really help make the whole process seamless, from editing to proofreading to cover design, and then even to distribution and marketing. Spines has you covered, and you also have access to professional editors to make sure all of your writing and works are 100% polished and ready for readers. What's even better is you can publish your books and reach readers globally within 30 days. Spines will also help market and distribute your books on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, on Apple Books, and so much more. They're just all about making publishing more accessible to everyone. Plus, Spines also does offer a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you really can try their services risk-free. Over 1,700 authors have already used Spines to help publish their books, so now it is your turn as well. So definitely check out Spines, make your publishing dreams become a reality. And yeah, if publishing a book in 2025 is one of your New Year's resolutions, definitely check out Spines. So thank you again to Spines for sponsoring today's video. For our wrap-up today, I'm gonna do things in a little bit of a different order, a different method, if you will. Seeing that it's 2025, it's a new year, I want to do things to improve the way we operate, the way we function here. So previously, I know I was doing all of my monthly reading wrap-ups in like chronological order of when I read them. I want to organize my wrap-ups now in their respective genres, and I feel like that's going to make the wrap-up feel more cohesive. Like if I'm talking about all the romances first, and then all the fantasies, and then all the whatevers, you know? I think that'll just make for a more like, I don't know, seamless flow. Because romance was our most popular genre for December, we're gonna start there, and we're gonna start with the 2 Christmassy romances that I read in December. The first being, you know what? This is the wrong order. I read The Christmas Tree Farm by Laurie Gilmore. It was also my book club pick for the month, my in-person book club, and also my Fable book club. Join if you haven't already. This was just, it didn't do much for me. I'm gonna be completely honest. It kind of turned me a little bit grinchy, but this delivered what it promised. It was a Hallmark movie with like more steam, more spice, which to be honest is something that I never asked for. I have never like watched a Hallmark movie or seen one of those Christmas type cozy movies and thought, hey, I would love this to be more spicy. I have never wanted that, but if you have wanted that, this book might be perfect for you. We follow Kira north, and she had this dream of homesteading because she was just influenced by I kind of saw that coming. You know what? We're just gonna hold her because she doesn't want to stand. Kira got influenced by TikTok, Instagram, whatever, to homestead. And she's like, yeah, I could totally do this, live off the land. So sight unseen, she buys a plot of land, not knowing it was actually a Christmas tree farm. Kira is this grumpy character who does not like Christmas, who does not like the holiday season, who does not like small towns, but she ends up in this very Stars Hollow type of a cozy small town. Everyone is sort of expecting her to open the Christmas tree farm again that she's just bought. And although she had no plans to do so, she realizes that her little farm, her little homestead has a lot of repairs needed and she just needs money. So she eventually, you know, has to tackle this challenge of opening a Christmas tree farm. She meets this guy, obviously it's a romance, and it gets a little spicy. I did not love this. I thought it was very insta-lovey. It was very physical first. It was just kind of like all the things that I don't like in a romance, to be quite honest. I also really felt so aggravated about Kira as the main character for the majority of the book because she was just this like overly grumpy character. Like this has grumpy sunshine trope, but like reversed. So we have Kira who's the grumpy, and then we have our male main character who's the sunshine. But she was just like, she wasn't even grumpy. I think she was just outright mean at the beginning. And I know Girlie was going through a lot at the beginning of the book, but she was just so mean to everyone, all the small town people, our love interest, that I was like, I don't understand why the love interest keeps coming back to her. The spice I also was not a fan of. It was the type of spice that is like kind of very vulgar, very like visceral. There was like one cute moment with a Christmas tree at the end of the book that reminded me of Love Actually, and that was like really the only part of the book that I was like, okay, this is giving me the cute cozy Christmas vibes that I wanted. This one didn't really do it for me. I know we're past the season, but let's say this next Christmas, if you want a Christmas tree farm romance, I would recommend Love Light Farms over this one. It's sort of a similar story, but it's, to me, in my personal opinion, it's done better. So cute cover, but didn't do it for me. The second one though that I read, Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey, was even worse, and this one turned me full Grinch. We follow Beat and Melody, who are both like music nepo babies. They both had mothers who were in the same band when they were younger, but their moms broke up the band in this very scandalous, controversial way a while ago, so the two had never really met each other. They encountered each other one time when they were 16, had this like really weird sort of instant connection, but never spoke to each other again until they were in their 30s, when this like reality show producer approaches them saying she wants them to help like get the band together, and she wants to make this whole like Christmas special reality show live stream thing where, yeah, they talk to their moms and get the band together to play this Christmas concert. I feel like this idea was really, really cute, but this was the first Tessa Bailey that I read, and I had heard the rumors that she was a very spicy author, so I should have known that this book wasn't for me. But yeah, again, similar to the Christmas Tree Farm, this was very spice first, smut first, physical first, insta attraction, to a very strange point where I'm pretty sure it was like literally in the first chapter they had just met, and immediately the two just hugged each other and like held each other in this very long awkward hug, where even like our female main character Melody was like thinking, oh, this is like a really weird long hug, and they were like in public and people were watching, and it just felt really weird. A lot of this book was really, really cringy for me. It made me feel so uncomfortable. The plot, while it was a good idea, wasn't really there. It was just like a spice book with 5% plot. The spice itself too, like I know spice readers who also hated this book because it's just like, it's a bizarre type of spice. Like the style of it was so strange to me. I had never read anything like this. It wasn't my thing. And I will be honest, I don't DNF books. You guys know that. What I do is sometimes I just sort of skim books to the end, so I guess it's sort of like a DNF, but it's like I still want to get through it, so I just kind of quickly read through it to see what happens at the end and see if I like missed anything. Yeah, this one was not worth it. I found it in a little free library. Probably gonna drop it off back into that little free library now that I'm done with it, because I honestly don't want this in my sight ever. I think this was my worst read of the year. We're going into our non-Christmas romance category. So I read I Hope This Doesn't Find You by Anne Liang. Oh my gosh, you guys know I love Anne Liang so much, but this one was really cute. It's a YA romance. It's sort of like an alternate universe version of To All the Boys I Have Ever Loved. Hold on, I always forget the name of that other one. To All the Boys I've Loved Before, like the one that got adapted into the Netflix series. It's sort of a parallel universe, kind of opposite world to that, because we have the whole concept of letters leaking to the world, but instead of love letters, they're hate emails. So our main character is Sadie. She is like the perfect student. She is like co-captain of her school. She's good at sports. She gets straight A's. But behind all of that, behind that like really nice, gentle, put together exterior, she does this thing where when she gets mad, instead of showing people that she's mad, she'll be like, oh no, everything's okay to everyone's faces. Behind their backs, she will be raging in her emails. So she will write these email drafts addressed to these people that have wronged her, and she'll like sort of like therapy it out with herself, type out all of her thoughts, all of her angry thoughts, but she will just save all of these in her drafts. She will never send them out until one day, no one knows how, those emails all of a sudden get sent out and it's chaos. Her perfect exterior image is ruined. She's making enemies with teachers, with other students, and most of the emails were addressed to this guy who's her rival, her academic rival, her other co-captain of her grade, and his name is Julius. And so now she has to deal with the repercussions of that, sort of deal with all this hate that she's getting. And this was really, really fun to read. I'm also, as I'm getting more into Anne Liang, I'm noticing that her books sort of have that like interconnected universe feeling that some other romance authors do, like Abby Jimenez, Emily Henry, Taylor Jenkins Reid, where they sort of like include cameos, like small mentions maybe of other characters that they've read about in their other books. Anne Liang, I've noticed, is doing a little bit of that as well, and it's really cute and fun to see. But yeah, this one was adorable. It honestly was maybe my least favorite Anne Liang so far, and that's, you know, I still gave it a 4 stars, so I still loved it, but this one definitely felt more YA compared to her other books. The characters were very YA, the like issues that our characters were dealing with were very YA, and obviously that's not a fault of the book. It is a YA book, and I'm reading it as an adult, knowing that I'm jumping into a YA book. But yeah, it was cute. The banter was cute, and it's just something easy to read. It's something to relax with. And I've said this before, but in Anne Liang books, she's so good at integrating like Chinese culture into all of her books, whether it like, I don't know, highlights what it's like growing up with like an Asian family with Asian parents. There's always like Chinese food in her books that make my mouth water. Like in this one, Sadie's mom owns a bakery, and all of these like Chinese pastries and buns and stuff were mentioned throughout the book, and it was just making me hungry. But I love that. It's cute. It's a rom-com. Did the job it was meant to do. The next book, will these stand up now? Maybe I just have to move them a little so they're not like tilted. I don't think my stand wants to stand today. I don't know what's going on. But Daisy Haites by Jessa Hastings. Second book in the Magnolia Parks universe. I didn't love Magnolia Parks. I thought the premise of it was fun, and I thought if Magnolia Parks was like a 100-page book, it would have been good. But there was a lot of repetition in it, and I just did not like Magnolia and BJ as characters. So I was really hesitant to go on in the series because I was like, do I want to put myself through another one of these books? But everyone had told me that Daisy Haites is the better side of the Magnolia Parks series. So I gave it a chance, and you know what? You guys were right. I did enjoy this so much more than Magnolia Parks. This entire series, if you don't know what it is, follows British socialites, essentially. The socialite side is like more Magnolia Parks, and the Daisy Haites side is more like criminal gang activity. We have like this sort of like darker, dangerous side of it, which makes things a lot more fun, makes the plot a lot more interesting. And I find that the characters on this side were also just better. Magnolia Parks felt like Gossip Girl, but you hated all the characters. Daisy Haites felt like the other side of Gossip Girl, that's like darker and dangerous, and the characters are more likable. I don't know why exactly, I just liked them more. What I found really interesting about this book is how parallel the timeline was with Magnolia Parks. I wasn't sure how like this Daisy side would tie in to Magnolia Parks, but this book essentially, like most of it, I would say 75% of it is in the exact same timeline that Magnolia Parks is. So you will see the events that happen in the Magnolia book, but in the Daisy, Christian, Julian POVs, and I found that to be really, really interesting to see all these things happening. So I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really well done, and I like how everything was like interwoven together. Jessa Hastings, I don't know what she's done with this, but she's created this universe where characters can just get away with stuff that normally I would be so mad about in a regular romance book. But the way Jessa Hastings writes about these things that happen, it doesn't feel like a romance. You just feel like drama. Like we don't get that like very typical romance book structure where we have our characters meeting and then they flirt and banter and whatever, and then there's the third act conflict. Like we don't follow that same structure. It's definitely more freeform. It feels more just like a drama within friend groups, and I really like that because yeah, we're getting these things. Like if this was written as a traditional romance book and if the characters were doing what they did in this book but written in a normal romance way, I would hate it. I would hate it. I'd be like, well, these characters suck. What are they doing to each other? But the way Jessa writes it, it's very Gossip Girl. I don't know. Characters can just get away with more than they normally would be able to in this alternate universe. It's wild. It's fun. I enjoyed it. I definitely want to keep going on in this series, and I did purchase the next 2 books, but I'm kind of wary about reading another Magnolia book just because I didn't like Magnolia's first book, and then after reading Daisy Haites, I feel like I dislike Magnolia even more. So I'm like now just like thinking of jumping back into Magnolia. I don't know. I don't really want to do it, but I know that like I will be rewarded by the next Daisy book after that. So that's where I currently am. Another popular romance I read was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. This is a small town billionaire dad trope, brother's best friend romance. We have so many tropes in here. I thought this was fine. I thought it was fine. There was like email bantering in this book, which I really love. If you know me, I love letter writing. I love email writing. I love like snarky, funny, flirty emails. I think they're just literally just 100% fun. So I loved that side of it. But what I didn't love was the spice. There was too much spice for me. You guys know I'm sensitive. I'm sensitive when it comes to spice. And yeah, there's too much in this one to the point where after the first 2 spice scenes, I just like skipped the rest of them. Like I saw spice coming up, I would skip 5 pages because I'm like, I don't need to read about all of this again. Like give me 1 spice scene, give me 2 spice scenes, I'm fine with that. But when we get to like 5, 6, 7 spice scenes, I'm like, do we really need this? I'm sure some people love it, but it's not my thing. I would prefer just more plot. I feel like I enjoyed the first half of this book a lot more than the second half. I think in the second half, the male main character was just doing way too much, to be quite honest. Like the extent of the things he was doing to make this romance work was just so not believable. It was just so out of this world. And I understand that the character's a billionaire, so like he can do things. He can do things a regular person can't because he has the money to. But for me, it was just so much. Man, could have just like chilled a little bit, but it was fine. It was enjoyable. I am gonna read the next book also because I've heard the next book is better than this one. I'm not 100% convinced that Elsie Silver and this series is for me. All right, P.S. I Hate You. This is a hardcover, so let's see if she'll stand. Stay, please. Please don't fall. P.S. I Hate You by Lauren Connolly. This one I had such high hopes for. I was really hoping this one to be a 5-star read, and it was okay. I would recommend it. I think it was still good. Like parts of it were good, but it wasn't the full 5-star that I wanted it to be. So the premise of this one, we follow Maddie, and at the beginning of the book, her brother has just passed away and they're at the funeral. He was like on the cusp of turning 30. He was this super adventurous person, always traveling the world and everything. So in a very true to his personality way, his last dying wish was for his ashes to be scattered across 8 different locations across the US. So like all different states. And he wanted Maddie to do it. So Maddie is like obviously 100% in. She would do anything for her brother, but there's a catch. While he requested her to do this, he also wanted her to do this alongside his best friend, who also happens to be someone who had broken Maddie's heart in the past. So now Maddie's conflicted because she wants to do this for her brother, obviously, but she's like, how am I going to survive traveling across the country to these 8 different states with this guy who broke my heart and I have not gotten over? This book actually I thought was gonna be more like of a road trip that happens over a month or so, but this book actually spans over 2 years, and we have sort of like between every few months they visit a different state. Like they'll take a couple days off work, visit another state, wait a couple months, be like, okay, I'll see you in the spring, and then do another state. And so while they do this, they kind of like go on this healing journey together because obviously they're both grieving, and then they also do some healing within each other because obviously they didn't part ways amicably in the past, so they just go through this growth and healing together. And I think so many bits of this story were beautiful. They were beautiful. There were a lot of full circle moments, and in a lot of ways this book reminded me of like an Emily Henry, where we weave together all these different elements into a romance, where the book is not just a romance anymore, it's more of a literary fiction with romance tied in. Also, our main character Maddie also goes through like trauma with her workplace and being in a toxic environment and not knowing how to deal with that, and I feel like that really resonated with me in particular because you guys know I had a rough year with like job stuff, work stuff, toxic environments. I had a rough year with that in 2024. So reading this and seeing her thought process, the things she was going through and the things she was thinking about work, I was like, is she me? I literally have gone through all of this. I thought a lot of that was really good, but Things that I didn't like. I think Maddie as an FMC in this book was one of those like really quirky, grumpy FMCs where it was just way overdone, and also just like she was doing some very inappropriate things, like seeing how her brother had just died. I feel like there were a lot of inappropriate comments made or a lot of actions that were just like rude and not acceptable. I do understand that she was going through a rough time, obviously, and everyone deals with grief differently, but for me, I didn't agree with a lot of things she did. I also wish that this book wasn't so spicy. I think that's just a theme for me. I just constantly wish books weren't as spicy as they are. But I think with this one in particular, it would have been better as a low spice to no spice book, just because we were going through such a tough time. Like, I think there's so much like beauty and depth in the story with what our characters are going through, and then just throwing in a spice scene in the middle of that, I think, in my opinion, it sort of like cheapened the book a little bit. Do we really need this spice scene in the middle of all of this? Like, I understand people have their needs, their physical needs, and they need to do things, but it could be a closed door, you know? Like, I get it. I get people need to get their minds off things. I didn't need it in so much detail, and I think when we went into all that detail, I was like just so taken out of the story. Like, it just became a spice book where I was like, but we just had this beautiful moment like 5 pages ago. Why are we here now? So yeah, a little bit mixed on this one, but I would still recommend it. I still think it was a really great read. There were just a few things that I would have adjusted if I were to make this book like perfectly fitting for myself. We're getting into our 2 fantasies that I read. So the first was The Rule of the Aurora King by Nisha J. Tooley. This is the second book in the Trial of the Sun Queen series. So this is an adult romantasy. In the first book, we follow a prisoner named Laurie. She's been a prisoner her entire life, and then for whatever reason, she gets rescued from her prison, taken to like the rival enemy land, and gets thrown into these trials for a chance to become the Sun Queen, to marry the Sun King. And the whole time she's there, she has no idea who put her there, why she's there, what everyone knows about her. She's hiding secrets of her own, and it was very standard. It was a very standard romantasy plot, but I think the first book was really fun in the way it was written. The second book, unfortunately, really suffered from second book syndrome, in my opinion. I kind of got really sick of this book while I was reading it. I got bored. I was like, what is even going on with the story? Are we going anywhere? What are we accomplishing with this book? It definitely felt like a bridge book where hopefully the third book will be more exciting. This one was just kind of like all prep towards like what the plot of the third book will be. But yeah, we have a fae world. We have a lot of emphasis on like mating bonds and stuff in this book, but it's kind of done differently. We have the sense of like the predestined fate mating bond, the type we all know and love, but we also have a different type of a bond where you can sort of pick someone to be like bonded with you, and when you bond with them, your powers become exponentially stronger after you've bonded together. So there's a lot of emphasis on like the fae nobility in this world, finding someone who they can bond their powers with just so they can ascend to this like next level of power. Basically, they're saying if you're single, you're gonna be weak. But yeah, this one just seemed like such a filler book. There was like a romance that was developing, obviously, and I found that to be very stereotypical, very tropey, nothing really special about it. I wasn't really into it. And I think there were a lot of like plot holes and world holes that were revealed in the second book that probably existed in the first book, but because the first book was so fast-paced and so fun, I didn't really notice them as much. But in the second book, where we were kind of like dragging things along, I noticed, yeah, a lot of holes in the magic system, in the world, a lot of things that were just like explained away, magical issues that for me seemed like, oh, how are we gonna solve this? There has to be some sort of like an interesting way to get around it. Those were just all really explained away, like put a band-aid on it, that's the explanation in 2 words, and that's it. So definitely some plot armor happening, but yeah, I don't know. There was something very unoriginal about the second book, unfortunately. I will continue with the third one because I do have it already on my TBR cart, and I hope that it becomes more fun, and I hope it was really just a case of second book syndrome and the series will pick up. As of right now, I'm not like feeling so motivated to go on in the series after reading this one, so unfortunate. this was a little bit of a miss for me. The second fantasy I read though, I loved this so much. Definitely a very different type of story. This is Sorcery and Small Magics by Maiga, Doocy, and this is a queer cozy fantasy where we follow Leo, who is attending a magic school. And in this world, we have two branches of magic that people can do. So people can either be, what are they called? They're called scribes or something. Scrivers? I don't know how to say that out loud, but there are people who can write spells. And Leo is on that side of the magic system. And on the other side, there are people that can cast spells. So if you write spells, you can't cast them. If you cast spells, you can't write them. And that's how magic is sort of like kept in check in this world. And it's such a cute little system because it means like no one can really do magic themselves. Like everyone has to teamwork and do things together, work as partners. And so back to Leo. Leo is a really good spell writer, but ever since a catastrophe that happened when he was a kid, he is unable to write like big spells. All he can do are little charms, little makeover things, like kind of cute like party tricks, and he's really good at them, and he's creative, and he's got it, you know, he has a skill for it. But anything that's like bigger or anything that can be seen as anything useful, he can't do. But while he's in a class, and in these classes obviously our like writers have to pair up with the casters so they can like test their spells together, he gets paired with his academic rival Grim, and by accident he gets a curse placed on him where all of a sudden now he is bound to obey everything that Grim says. And so that's definitely a bit of a pickle because first of all, Grim is his academic rival. They've been sort of enemies since they joined this school. And the second thing is that this curse that they have accidentally placed on Leo is actually a very illegal curse. Like, you're not allowed to do this. They did it by accident, but they can't really tell anyone because if they tell anyone, they're gonna get expelled, they're gonna go to jail. Like, there's a lot of things that could happen to them if word gets out. So they have no other choice but to go to the unquiet wood and to find the sorcerer who lives in the woods to try help them break their curse. This is such a cute story. It is definitely very cozy feeling, but unlike a lot of other cozy fantasies where I feel like the plot sort of falls to the wayside, this one has a really fun, interesting plot while also feeling cozy. And I feel like this could be written as a high stakes book if it really wanted to, but it remains like it keeps that cozy feeling throughout. And while I was reading this, I just kept picturing this in my head as like a Miyazaki like animated movie. Like, it felt like something like Howl's Moving Castle. I could picture that in my head, and now I really want this to be made into an anime. The world itself in the magic system is not so complex, so you don't really need to spend a lot of time learning about the world. You just kind of jump into the plot, into this cozy magical world. I will say around the 2/3 mark, it sort of like fell into a lull a little bit and then picked up again at the end. But overall, I really loved this. It's definitely a slow burn, and I will definitely be picking up the second. I think this one's gonna be a trilogy. Such a cute read. So yeah, if you're looking for a cozy queer fantasy, definitely pick this one up. It's adorable. I love it. And my sci-fi read, The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley. I read this in my reading vlog where I read like the top Goodreads books of the year, so I feel like I don't have to talk about this one too much, but this one is a sci-fi book. It's a time travel book. Our main character at the beginning of the book gets a new job at this top secret ministry, and she doesn't really know what's going on in it until she gets hired. But basically this ministry, they're like running experiments of bringing people back from history, like from back in the day. They're bringing them to the current world and seeing if they can adjust and live in society today and be helpful to the society. And their whole thing is they pick people from the past who died, like who would have died in their timelines. So they'll pluck people up from the middle of wars or people who are sick or whatever, and they'll bring them to present time, heal them with like modern technology or whatever, and try to like indoctrinate them basically to make them assimilate with modern day times. Our main character gets a job, and her job is to basically be a buddy of one of these people from the past, to live with them, to teach them about society and modern day time, and to just like make sure they're getting along okay in the world. So she gets paired with this expat from the 1800s who would have passed away in Franklin's lost expedition. And as they live together, you know, she teaches him about what is like appropriate in society today, and he teaches her about his time and his experience and opens up her world to different things. And it's this really interesting, slightly uncomfortable but amazing read with a lot of emphasis on like not belonging. Our main character is mixed race, so while she's struggles with sort of like not knowing where she belongs in between cultures. The expat character obviously struggles with like living between time zones. He obviously still feels like he's in the 1800s, but he's in the wrong time. So like everyone's sort of dealing with this feeling of belonging somewhere, and it's such an interesting story. It goes into these really interesting topics, and yeah, I talk a lot more about it in my reading vlog, but this was one of my favorite reads of the year. It was so good. I can see why people might not agree with that sentiment and not enjoy this book, but for me, I loved it. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was so well done, and yeah, it makes you a little bit uncomfortable, but sometimes that's a good thing. And then we have another very uncomfortable read, Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. Another book that I read in that same reading vlog. This one made me so uncomfortable. So the premise is really interesting. We follow two brothers who their father just passed away. The brothers are not close. First of all, they are quite different in age. And then second of all, they're just very different people. So we have Peter. He's very successful. He is generally very well liked. He's like a lawyer. He's like handsome. He's liked by the ladies, but he's obviously now dealing with grief. He has his own problems. He has like a big drug problem, and he has obviously like traumas from his past with relationships, with whatever. And then we have Ivan, who's the younger brother, who really struggles with social settings. Like he's definitely not social. He's very awkward. He is a chess prodigy, but yeah, he's just like a little bit more of an outcast normally. And so we see the two of them dealing with their father's death in very different ways. They, for the most part, live their separate lives, but come together a few times over the span of the book. And then at the same time, they're also dealing with romantic relationships in very different ways. First of all, Ivan meets an older woman who is like closer to Peter's age, and then Peter is like sort of dealing with loving two people at the same time. Such an interesting read. The writing style, Sally Rooney's writing style, she's always had a very quirky, like very different writing style. First of all, she doesn't use quotation marks, which aggravates me to no end. I think her writing style is very unique, and I can deal with it. You know, it's very artistic. It's a choice. But the thing I can't deal with is not having quotation marks when characters are speaking, because oh my gosh, it's so hard to keep track of like who is saying what, and then also like what are thoughts and what are being said out loud, because this book in particular really feels like a rambling of being in someone's subconscious mind. Like you are really deep into these characters' minds, and you just hear every single intrusive thought that they have, but because there are no quotation marks on dialogue, you don't know what has been said out loud and what is just like an intrusive thought running in someone's head. I was so aggravated and frustrated reading this book, but it was so good, and that makes me even more frustrated because I'm like, I had such a rough time reading this book, but I think it was so good, and I think I loved it. So mad about it because it made me mad. Like it irked me, this book, but it really hits you in a deep way. I wouldn't recommend it for anyone. Like if you are not wanting to read a book that will get you really mad and frustrated, like don't pick this up. But if you want to get deep into people's minds, really get into this sort of character study, read this book. It's really rewarding. It's really good. By the end of it, I was like so just like attached to these characters and so like on edge, wanting to know what would happen to them. It was insane. It was insane. There's also like very oddly spicy, it's not spice, like this isn't a spicy book, but there are like intimate scenes that are written, and they're so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable. And yeah, I wouldn't call them spice because they're not written in like for the purpose of being spicy. Like it's not to be like, oh, I'm gonna enjoy this spice scene. Like no, they're written to be just like so awkward, to really get you into the scene, but like not in a great way, but also in this like really well done way. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe this book, but read it if you want to. You may love it, like I did end up really loving it, but I don't think it's for all. Okay, the last one for the month, we have The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This one is a mystery. Very whodunit, very Agatha Christie, very interesting concept. So we follow a character who we don't really know who he is for a lot of the book, because he is trapped in this like game, sort of, where every time he wakes up as a different character. So he's stuck on a day loop where one day repeats itself over and over again, but every time he wakes up and repeats the day, he repeats it as a different person in someone else's POV. Every single day while we repeat this day at 11 p.m., Evelyn Hardcastle dies. And so our character has 8 days to figure out who killed her, who was responsible for her death, and only then can he escape this loop. What an interesting concept, right? Like, so every time he's living in someone else's POV, he has different abilities. He'll have access to like different friends or different connections, or some people he will have more power. Some people he'll be weaker, but he'll have like a better opportunity to sort of like sit at the sidelines and watch people. And as we go on through the days, we sort of see how his different POVs connect and how all of his actions that he did as the other characters will affect the loop as it goes on. Like if he does something wild, it might completely change the loop and like crash the entire system. Really interesting read in that way, but I will say I don't know if I fully enjoyed this book. I think like the first third of the book I was really into, and then I started losing interest. I don't know if it was like too many different POVs that I wasn't interested in. I wish I loved this book more because the concept is so cool and I really wanted to be like in it and to like try and like put together the clues and stuff. But I think the way this book was written, it didn't give you enough clues as it went on. And I think in a mystery, mysteries can suffer in two ways. In one way, it could maybe give you too much all at once and then the twist at the end is really predictable, or it can give you too little and then you just feel frustrated because you're not getting anywhere and you have no idea what's going on, and it doesn't feel as satisfying to read. Like when you're just stuck in this limbo of like thinking what the heck is going on the whole time, it's not fun. At least for me, it's not. Like I like the feeling of making progress and seeing things come together and being like, oh, making connections and all of that, but I feel like we didn't really get that. Parts of it were good, but I definitely lost interest at the end. The twist was cool, I will say. It wasn't what I was expecting, but it was a cool twist. I would still recommend it if you're looking for a mystery, but I don't think it was my favorite, if that makes sense. I also wish our main character, so all the POVs we get into, I don't know if this is spoilery. I don't think it is because it's so vague and you have no idea what's going on. But our main character, all of his POVs that he jumps into are male. And at one point in the book, he was really like thinking of like when he realized like he would be in a different POV every single day, he was like, oh, it would be so strange to be in a female POV. Like that would feel so weird. And he spent like an entire paragraph like thinking about this, like, oh, what would it feel like to be like female? And then I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I can't wait for him to like jump into a female body and see what it's like, because everybody he jumped in, he described the feeling like he would jump into like an older person's body and be like, oh wow, like it feels weird moving this way, or he would jump into someone who's like thinner or thicker and he would really like comment on like how the different bodies felt. So I was like, what is he gonna think as a female? And then he never got into a female body, so that was disappointing. So very interesting. I would still say give it a try because it's such a unique concept, but I feel like certain things I just wanted to be done like a little better, or I was just like missing a couple things. So that is it for the reading wrap up. That was 11 books. I'm excited for what's to come this year. You know what? One last thing we're gonna do. We are going to set our reading goal. We're gonna set our reading goal for 2025 because I haven't done it yet. So here we are. Reading challenge. I've read 1 book so far. Great. My goal last year was 100 books, and I think I want to do the same thing. I ended up reading 158, so I blew way past that goal. But the thing about me is while I read a lot, I don't want reading to feel like a big challenge. So I want to set my goal to something that I know I will do and something that I know I will fly through and like pass with flying colors, if that makes sense. So I think I'm gonna set it at 100. Again, because there's no better feeling than seeing your Goodreads reading goal and it telling you that you are 50 books ahead of schedule. Like that feels so good, where I feel like if I set a really aggressive reading goal and saw that I was falling behind, it would just like discourage me and make me feel bad about myself. And no one needs that negative energy in their lives. So 100 books, let's do it again. There we go. 1 out of 100 books read. Love that for us. Anyways, that's it for now. I'm gonna leave you guys here for now. I hope you enjoyed this little reading wrap up. Let me know if you like this new format of grouping the genres together. If you did like this video, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what your reading goal for 2025 is. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!